First and foremost, thanks to everybody who sent questions in. We got some really, really good ones and some very, very relevant ones. Do you want to kind of take the first one?
Sure. This is always our favorite one. So it's always talking about tax bills in Chicago. So obviously we know that this year we had delayed tax bills, and it definitely came out this last month. So everyone's kind of talking about it. Everyone's tweeting about it supposedly as well.
So what was the question?
So I finally received my tax bill last week in Cook County. It went up almost 20%. How is that possible?
Oh, well, we knew coming into this that this was going to be drastic.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a little bit difficult to explain in the sense that taxes in Chicago are already very complicated, right? But we expected this hike to seem extreme, but as you and I have talked so much about, it seemed so much more extreme than it actually was.
Oh, totally.
Because we have to remember that our taxes are paid in arrears, meaning that we're always paying for the year behind. So in 2022, we're actually paying 2021's taxes. In 2021, we were paying 2020's taxes. Now, where this all got so goofy, or goofier maybe, is the fact that in 2020, March 2020, Cook County put a COVID reassessment in place under the mindset that this is going to be a rough economic ride. We want to try and help our homeowners. We are going to put an additional reassessment in place, a COVID reassessment, to lower the tax basis and make it a little bit more financially easy on people.
Okay.
This happened all before we knew anything that was going to go on with regards to the housing market, real estate values, or anything. This was just literally a, let me help you out.
So essentially, they just reduced the assessed values of people's houses so that they would get a reprieve on their tax bills.
Exactly.
Essentially.
The hard part was, and what we were telling people even at the time, was that, yes, they were doing it immediately, but people weren't going to see those tax bills until 2021. Mm-hmm. So, hey, we're going to possibly save you money or not increase on you. A lot of taxes actually went down. Mm-hmm. So in 2021, those tax bills actually went down. But we have to remember they went down in a bit of an artificial way, not due to the market, but due to the concern of what the market was going to do back in 2020.
Yep.
So 2021, a lot of people saw their taxes go down. Some people saw their taxes stay the same. Very few saw them go up, but it was artificially down. In 2021 then, gosh, I'm going to confuse myself saying this so many times. In 2021, we had our triennial reassessment. Every 3 years in Cook County, we reassess taxes.
But why is that? Because every other county in Illinois does it once a year.
The reason we do it every 3 years is just the sheer amount of properties that we have. Yeah. The assessor couldn't keep up with it, and literally they are going around and kind of doing what they can to keep up with it, and it's just sheer volume. So they do it every 3 years. Your tax basis, your valuation will stay in place for 3 years, and then every 3 years, then they'll reassess, either for better, for worse, or whatever.
But so then why do tax bills change on an annual basis? Because that's one thing that does come up is even in negotiations, we negotiate 105%, expecting tax bills to somewhat go up on an annual basis.
Well, taxes tend to go up, right?
Yeah.
They very rarely tend to go down. And what changes every year, what is assessed every year, is the multiplication factors that they factor in for the taxes. So that we could say, hey, we're going to use the same valuation. If we take a $500,000 property that's been assessed by Cook County at $500,000, that valuation is going to stay in place for 3 years. Now, that's not to say the money that they ask for in different points of that isn't going to go up, right? Yeah. So we could say, hey, the schools need a little bit more, or the fire department needs a little bit more, or streets and sanitation needs a little bit more. So the multiplication factors against that assessed valuation can go up.
Yeah.
So then every 3 years we come in and we do a reassessment to say, hey, what's happened to valuations in that next time? So what we have to remember is that the tax valuation was artificially depressed in 2020, payable in 2021. Then in 2021, this new assessment came out, and right, wrong, or indifferent, everyone has to admit that most of our real estate values had gone up, some of them more dramatically than others because of what was happening with COVID.
Yeah. It was the pandemic appreciation that we saw.
Most people did very, very well in it. So when those tax bills just came out, they seemed high because they were reflective of the new valuation, which was increased, but it was the new valuation against the COVID valuation, which was artificially decreased. Yep. So the spread between the two got exacerbated to a bigger amount so that, we saw a lot of people that said, hey, my taxes are up 20%. My taxes went up as well. Now, I am taking solace in the fact, and I do this for all of my taxes. If I'm paying more taxes, that means my house is probably worth more money.
Yeah.
And so
Totally.
I don't like to pay for them, obviously. I continually remind myself that they're supporting a lot of good things. But I remind myself as I get that tax bill that, hey, the valuation, my equity in my property has just gone up. So you know what? When I look at it that way, I'm probably ahead of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, so I always say, like, remember with taxes that file your homeowner's exemption. That's due, it typically opens up in January. And I think they close in March, if I'm not mistaken.
For certain. So can you just help everyone that's listening, what is a homeowner's exemption?
Yeah, so if you actually live in the home as your primary property, you get a discount essentially on your property taxes, which is really great. The other good thing is you can go 3 years back in arrears. And so I always suggest that with my clients. Like sometimes I'll look it up and be like, hey, you haven't filed in, 3 years.
Yep.
Go back. It's free money in your pocket.
It's called a certificate of error
Yes.
when you go back and file it for up to 3 years past.
Yeah.
No, it's a great point to note, especially for our people that have purchased new homes this year.
Mm-hmm.
We find that typically it'll roll over if the past person will have it, but not always. And trust me, Cook County's not going to reach out to you and say, hey, you can save money by filing this. So we always tell people to make sure, check where it's at now. Call us, we'll help you check where it is. Because that's tax savings year over year. Now, once you've filed it once, and if you don't move or you don't change your deed or anything like that, the likelihood of it staying in place is really, really high. But still, keep an eye on it because once again, if it somehow falls off or you're not getting it, nobody's going to be chasing you with a check, and it's substantial enough.
Yeah, it is on your tax bill though too. So like when you get the tax bill, it's at the bottom.
Another great tip we always tell all of our clients is to make sure that you are appealing your assessed valuation. That's another way to definitely save some money. There's different times that you can appeal it based on what township you're in, so you'd have to check on that. There's also different ways to do it, but typically it's a great savings. A lot of the tax appeal attorneys, they work in a fashion in which they don't charge you unless there's actually a savings. Then if there is a savings, they take a percentage of that. The other thing that we see is there are some digital companies as well that work for a very, very small flat fee, but actually state that they will not stop appealing until they get some sort of savings. We did that on one before once where it was
I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, it's a small flat fee and they're motorized. It's a system. They go. And at some point they say, hey, you just saved this. So
That's a good little tip.
that's a good little tip.
Nice.